Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we are going to be going over the unofficial translation of the live letter number 28 that aired March 20, what is it, 5th? March 26th? March 26th, Saturday, March 26th, 2016. And Marco, thank you again for doing the translations as you do every time, my man. Guys, be sure to throw Marco a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. I'll include both of those links in the description of the video. On top of that, you can support his stream in many, many ways, so be sure to do that, especially if you like seeing these translations. Now, on top of that, there is an official translation. We'll be going into that afterwards, but 3 a.m. this morning, we got to check this out, and I'm going to be upfront with you about this. While there are some good tidbits of information in here, a lot of it is about stuff that's happened and feedback regarding patch 3.2. There's no major 3.3 spoilers, though there are a few previews of content to come for 3.3. It's nothing super crazy. We're not going to see like tons of pictures of all the new content and a list of things that are coming, but some teases are definitely here. They started by showing off some new merchandise that's going to be on the store, like Paisa masks. After Nico Nico Chokaigi 2016, which is later in April, there will be a ton of new merchandise on the e-store, so be on the lookout for that. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we started off with a little bit of job Q&A. You'll see here I have current question a few times. I can actually get rid of that now it's gone, just for the mid-translation things. They addressed healers missing a lot in dungeons. They said that originally they didn't mean for the values required in dungeons to be so high, so they're going to make some adjustments there. They're not sure what their move's going to be in terms of raids, if they want to add accuracy to healer gear or not. So they're currently just aiming to make sure that healers have less trouble inside of just plain 4-player dungeons with their accuracy. They also addressed the Eggy Glamour system we've been waiting to hear about, and they said they are planning to have it soon, but it is taking a lot more time than they originally thought it was going to. As such, when the Glamours do come out for the Eggy Glamour system, they will be one at a time. You will not be getting a whole mess of them. Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll change their minds on that one, but we'll have to see. They're also going to add an option for you to remove Gauss Barrel on your own screen if you don't like the look of the way Gauss Barrel looks on your machinist. They're also talking about potentially giving all of the healers a mind buff instead of giving some the mind buff and some the piety buff. Specifically, Astrologian was mentioned. So they need feedback on that. Please go provide Square Enix feedback on the piety buff versus the mind buff when it comes to healers in the party. Would you value more just all healers giving the mind buff and none of them giving the piety buff, and then just removing the piety party buff altogether? Or would you prefer to have it mixed like the way it is now? Be sure to give them your feedback on that. So, parry, they're potentially reworking it in 3.4, but that's at the earliest. There's no guarantee that it's going to happen in 3.4, just that is the earliest it can happen. They're also currently in the works of finishing up that crossover party finder that we thought was potentially going to be in 3.2. They said the feature may be ready for 3.3, and it is currently planned for that time frame. Whenever they say currently planned, though, it is subject to change. We've noticed that a lot. So current plans are in discussions. They're setting the rules, they're setting the restrictions, making sure that you're able to accurately search, hey, is this a learning party? Is this a farm party? They want to make sure that's very clear what kind of party you are joining in the crossover party finder. Then, speaking of which, since we're going to talk about the party/raid finder, they were asked about Alexander Midas. They said that the world first came at approximately the amount of time they expected it to be. They're not 100% sure if they've accomplished their initial goal of reducing DPS checks while increasing mechanical checks. It's hard to tell just because not enough gear is really available to make that full judgment call. It's only been like 5 weeks since the expansion. Since the patch came out. So they're still looking at that. It seems that A8 Savage, they expected players were going to have quite a bit of trouble with the amount of damage, with the amount of mechanics happening all at once, but they saw that once groups utilize the fact that the new materia system allows them to get extra health without needing to completely change their itemization, and it's a reversible effect that doesn't require the replacement of gear. Once they started utilizing that, they saw that it went down much, much quicker. Now, one thing Yoshi P said he actually doesn't like, is, and he apparently I can assume he didn't like this back with A1 and A2 either, was that the difficulty staggering of the floors didn't seem on pace. He feels that personally A6 is harder than A7, especially with more gear as it comes through for people. So be on the lookout for that if you're a group progressing. That if you can get through A6, generally it seems, according to Yoshi P's own opinion, A7 will be easier. I personally don't know. A7 is a hell of a fight, so we'll have to see how the community reacts to that one. They're also talking about readjusting fates, because we all know the Emulsion and the Sylph ones suck. They said it's a little bit complicated, but they are working on it. On top of that, Orchestrion, the fact that it's not surround sound and that it's annoying. They also spoke about how people are just winning Orchestrion roll after Orchestrion roll because there's no unique attribute to them. You can hold as many of them as you can fit in your inventory. So they're actually, instead of changing it so you can only hold one ever, They're making it so that one is guaranteed for most content, and I'm assuming things like Sephiroth and other content moving forward is specifically what they're mentioning when it comes to that. Continuation of the Void Ark story, they actually showed a few images, don't have them here. They didn't give us a name, they didn't give us an item level, nothing of substance, but they did show us a few pictures of what looks to be an outdoor area. Now, I know Ethis is already heavily speculating, as he has had plenty to say about this in not just previous State of the Realms, but also his own videos. So if you're curious about what Ethis' thoughts are about the Void Ark lore, highly recommend you go check out his channel. It is very relevant to what we see here and what is likely going to be the outcome of our second 24-man instance in Heavensward. So on top of that, we then move into the feast after they finished talking about all that stuff. Some adjustments that are coming. 3.25 is next week. Now, because they're talking about PvP adjustments, I generally tend to feel like the PvP patches like 3.25 will be on Thursdays. It seems to be a pattern that they're following through consistently with. That being said, there are other things coming in 3.25, so we may actually see this as early as Tuesday. For PvP, though, we're going to see adjustments to Adrenaline. They didn't get into specifics. They're going to lower the number of walls that are in the middle of the arena, so there's less line of sight available. And they're also going to be nerfing the burst damage that machinists will do. On top of that, they are going to be speeding up the games even more. They just lowered the match time down to 8 minutes. They want to reduce it even more because I think they're seeing more and more so that matches are running the entire duration. And that's something that a lot of people didn't expect. Wolves Den, a lot of the matches were over in 1 minute, 60 to 90 seconds. Not so much happening with the Feast, where games are actually dragging out for the entire duration. So they're trying to shorten that duration so people can get a few games in, and still feel good about their progress in the game. There's also going to be some adjustments to matchmaking. I didn't know that matchmaking had any sort of algorithm to it in the first place, because it just feels like it matches people regardless of anything. But it may be that now that we're moving towards the season, they're ready to implement the things that they worked on with Lords of Verminion's matchmaking system that they said they were testing. I don't know how many people were testing that, though. On top of that, so the season's actually not going to begin in 3.25 due to the major adjustments that they're doing in 3.25, or at least that's what they called it. 2 weeks after 3.25 will be the official start of the season. It sucks to have the official season pushed back 2 weeks. I know I was looking forward to having a more grounded progression sense when doing PvP. That being said, Ninja changes are supposed to be coming. Dark Knight changes are supposed to be coming in 3.25. I'm looking forward to seeing how that impacts the arena, as well as how much shorter the games are really going to be. I'm going to guess they're going down to 6 minutes this time. Now, animal weapons. Now, a lot of people have been debating, will the next step of the animal weapon be 3.25 or 3.3? Last this was spoken about, it was kind of an either-or kind of deal, and now it's grounded that it will indeed be 3.25. Now, it will not be going all the way to the item level that we currently have from the Midas weapons. I think that's fair to expect. But around that point, since next week will be 3.25, it's about a week before people start getting their lore weapons, so it actually starts giving people a little bit more of an option. I had a feeling they were kind of waiting until the 7 weeks were up for people's initial lore weapons, and people were getting more A6 clears. We will be seeing some progression with that, so if you have your finished weapons, get ready to grind them out, because next week we're going to be moving on to the next step. 3.3 will also see another addition to the animal weapon. That will be the one that probably pushes it closer to the maximum item level that we have for weapons right now. And on top of that, in 3.3, stats on your relic weapon will be customizable. You won't need any Alexandrites, so don't hoard those, but be ready. I would start collecting materia personally, even if they're not planning to use Alexandrites. Whenever I think of stat customization, that's what I think of. There's other things they could do, but I'm going to start saving materia. I don't know about you guys. They also showed off a few animal weapons, the Dark Knight one, the White Mage one. They look pretty good. We will see another model change coming out of the animal weapons very soon, so it's not just going to be a glow added on. We don't know if that's in 3.25 or 3.3, however. They also were asked about the recent unveiling of the Phantasy Star Online 2 crossover event. Phantasy Star Online 2 is very well known for doing crossover events. They just take ideas and crossovers from tons of different things over in Japan. And Final Fantasy XIV now being added to that, a lot of people wonder if we'll see something. They want to do something. It's not currently on their plans or their scheduling, but they do want to do some sort of crossover event where we actually get something from Final Fantasy XIV. If you don't know about that, I'd recommend researching Phantasy Star Online 2, how they do crossover events. It's very different from the way that we're used to referring to crossover events, where both games or all the games involved get something from one another, especially with the Final Fantasy XI Dragon Quest Final Fantasy XIV crossover. Now into Crafters and Gatherers. Now there are some big things here that you're going to want to pay attention to. As much as this was supposed to be about 3.2, this is a very important bit about 3.3. So they want to tackle the fact that materia is way more important than they originally wanted it to be on Crafters Gatherers. If you remember back before Heavensward even came out, they still wanted people who use materia melding to get an edge and get ahead faster, but from the way it's been working recently, it's just you use materia. It's a natural part of progression still for Crafters and Gatherers, even though with the red scripts involved, there's a bit of a gateway there. So they say they haven't executed well on that, so they are going to be doing some things that are different. In 3.3, we're going to see an itemable upgrade for crafters and gatherers. In 3.4, of course, we will have new gear that can be made for the final tier of Alexander. And also, there's going to be some updates to red scripts in 3.3. There's not going to be new scripts. They're just going to be updating red scripts again in 3.3. Now, specifically, the new gear for crafters and gatherers that's being added in 3.3 must be made and cannot be traded in for. You will get current gear to make it, and to help, they are also going to add new sources of grade 4 materia. They can't specifically say how you're going to get more crafting and gathering grade 4 materia, but there is a new thing being implemented in order to obtain more of those. They have guaranteed it will not be the Ixal Beast Tribe quests, so don't start worrying about that yet. On top of that, there were some questions about melding. People were wondering if they don't know anybody who can do melds, which it's a stretch if you ask me. If there's an NPC that can do melds for you, that you pay the NPC and he does melds. Yoshi says he's very hesitant to do this. Kind of undermines an entire feature of the game. If they do an NPC at all, it would only be for the 100% slots on armor. The forbidden or advanced melding slots would still be required for a player. It's under consideration, but Yoshi P did not seem happy with the idea of adding an NPC that takes out an aspect of player-on-player interaction in an MMORPG. And I can't say I blame him for thinking that. Cordial cooldowns might be reduced. It's potential. There's going to be... Now, they asked about anima armor, which has been asked, I think, before. And that's the idea of having an anima weapon style progression for all of your armor. And they said this was especially prevalent in Western players asking for this. Oddly enough, they actually talked about it because they were talking about new additions for patch 4.0 and beyond. They said it is possible we may see something equivalent to an anima armor, which is not going to be called that, obviously, when we get to it, in patch 4.0 or in the 4.x series, the next expansion. But in 3.x, no, we will not see it. Now, moving on to the next thing, we're almost halfway through with this, guys. Free companies. So in 3.3, new housing plots are being added to existing wards. Now, they've spoken about doing this for quite some time, which means the next step is apartment housing, which is basically going to be Ishgard housing, where you can get a small room that's personal to you. Basically, what I'm just guessing, this is not confirmed, what I'm going to say right now. I'm guessing it would be the equivalent of a free company personal room, where you have the personal room in the house, but something that you could just rent out. They mentioned having like 512 apartments available initially. We'll see what actually executes, because we all know they change plans very, very often before it gets to execution. The orchestral music being surround sound, of course, they mentioned that. We talked about that earlier. They're also thinking about adding a shuffle function to the orchestrion, as well as making it so that when you turn your character and you're an orchestrion, you don't hear it going from the left and right part of your headset. Also, they were asked about implementing music from other Final Fantasy, something I actually thought they might do, but I was worried for the same reason they seem to be worried. They don't want to undermine the fact that Square Enix sells music from other games. So, obviously, Square Enix sells the music of their own game for Final Fantasy XIV. So it would kind of be odd if they do add some sort of functionality to do this. It would probably be in the MOG station, charging on a per song basis. So there's nothing set in stone about that. It's all about demand. We all know how they act if people say, do it, do it, do it. And there's people who will buy it, they will do it. Now, items also. Now, some of you may be aware that the game has launched in other regions, Korea, China, and I'm sure that other things are in the works as well. But there are some items from the Chinese version specifically that people have been coveting for a long time. It's possible that they're going to make their way into the MOG station very, very soon. And then they also randomly asked if they can make Orchestrion Scrolls stackable. You know, the ones you get when you actually beat a boss or you beat a dungeon, it just falls into your inventory. Yeah, they said probably not. So just putting that under the items tab here. Now, they actually very lightly previewed a new type of content that's coming in 3.3, and they are called treasure hunting dungeons. These are probably the content that they mentioned that would be designed for anywhere from 1 to 4 players. Now, the reason why I say that is because they are very much referenced to be a new version of maps almost, where you get some sort of means of entering the dungeon. It determines what kind of dungeon it's going to be, and then when you're going through it, you'll clear a room and then you'll have a choice. Do I want to open lever A or do I want to open lever B and go into those subsequent rooms? And that's going to be what you're going to do in these treasure hunting dungeons. Obviously, it's very few details, so some of it's speculation that we're dealing with here. This is going to be a patch 3.3 implementation. and it is slated to work similarly to treasure maps, although they will be adding new items to the current high-level treasure maps, so be on the lookout for those as well. New side quests. We got some confirmation about the Scholisticate. Because I call it Scholisticate. It's actually like Scholisticate or something like that. I don't know the pronunciation. New Scholisticate quests are coming in 3.4, and Hildebrand is now going to be in every major patch, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. They didn't speak about 4.0 and beyond, but they made it seem like he is now a mainstay, something that we can expect to continually see evolve. I'm going to hold my expectations and stop them when 4.0 begins. I'm sure they'll do it based on demand at that point again. They also asked about adding the Warring Triad to the main story. Yoshi P said they could, but they don't because they don't want to force Primals to be in the main story every time. So the Gold Saucer is going to be getting some updates. Also, current question, break time. Same reason why I did it before. Sorry, Marco. A lot of rewards, not enough MGP. So there were some data mine files about Chocobo Racing back when 3.0 first launched about Chocobo Racing. And so it has been confirmed Chocobo Racing will be seeing an update in 3.25 and that MGP rewards will be increased throughout the Gold Saucer. That includes the challenge logs, which they feel do not currently give enough. And I would agree, even though I don't really do too much in the Gold Saucer, I am getting very close to my Fenrir mount and would like a means of pushing it all the way. Speaking of Fenrir mount, Fenrir will fly in 3.3. Yoshi P doesn't know exactly how it's going to look yet, but Yoshi P recommended that Fenrir kind of breathes on the air under him and creates like an ice path. Probably how 99% of people guessed that Fenrir was going to be able to fly, would be running along an ice path that he himself was creating. Seems Yoshi P had the same thought as you guys. Also, they are working on getting the tank mounts in for 3.3. There's no guarantee that all 3 of the tank mounts will be available at once. That comes from the official translation. Tank mounts will start being introduced as flying mounts in 3.3. Keep that in mind. As well as other flying mounts, including one of those like Gervanian puff-looking plants. Looks like a dandelion or like a what are those things called? The floater pollen. Looks like Gervanian pollen, pretty much. What are those things? Pollen. Also, a new feature in 3.3 that was also spoken about probably since 3.0, the live letter, since right back when the expansion began, is Yoshi P mentioned new companions for you to enter dungeons with. Now, this is basically something that they originally called like Grand Company mercenaries, where basically you would be able to hire NPCs to your Grand Company and use them as a means of progression. It seems that this is aiming for 3.3 along with new Grand Company ranks, something people have been asking for a very long time. So these are companions you will deliberately be going into dungeons with to help level them up. We don't know exactly how the system's going to work. We don't know what changes they've made to it. Again, very few details here. We'll get more details on it on the next official live letter. They also showed off some new shirts, a new ninja shirt, a new white mage shirt, more stuff that's going to be sold at Nico Nico Chokaigi that will be available in the Square Enix e-store later on. They then went on a break and came back with probably one of my favorite guests they've had on the show in a very long time, Hiroshi Minagawa. I love when they've had the Japanese community member on the show. I love when they had Koji Fox. But a lot of the times when we're up at 4 in the morning, we want to hear meat. We want details on the game. As great as it is to get these interviews, I wish they could be at a more timely hour. It's also kind of hard to follow along with the guests because they chit-chat a lot, and there's the language barrier for a lot of us. So Hiroshi Minagawa, they started off with the basic things. He is the lead UI designer, or the UI lead designer, however you want to word it. He also is the art lead for Final Fantasy XIV. So as somebody who does the UI stuff, he's very, very important to have on the show, especially because add-ons. We'll talk about those in a little bit. So anyway, he had another shirt that's going to be sold at Nico Nico. They randomly brought up Dark Knight in PvP at the beginning because they forgot to mention it before the break that they're getting buffs as well. So then quick QA about Hiroshi. He's worked on Tactics, Tactics Ogre, Vagrant Story, Final Fantasy XII, and of course Final Fantasy XIV. They've asked a very awkward question of what his job entails and what he actually does with designs. He explained some of the process and asked you for Yoshi P to please stop working so much because he's afraid he's going to get hurt. So he actually refers to a lot of other things. He talks about other MMOs he enjoys, World of Warcraft, Rift, Guild Wars 2. He enjoys the different UI elements that they have natively incorporated. He also really likes the UI of The Division because he says it's very simple. It's a different type of game, but it's very appealing to look at. But he says for Final Fantasy XIV, one thing that he loves about it is very standard. It's very easy to understand. It's very flexible. So you're able to adjust it pretty much to whatever you want to based on the games that you've played before and the experience that you want to replicate. He says that also, because it's a Final Fantasy game and there's not really many MMOs to go off of, they really had to kind of come up with something that was standard to the MMO genre, but also kind of felt like Final Fantasy vibe. He also says he's responsible for adding things like the Hall of Novice, and he said there's more features coming. He showed off a few pretty neat UI elements to help both new players and current veterans. One of the big ones was actually having an optimize button for your gear. For those who haven't used it in other MMOs before, the optimize button basically looks at all the gear you have in your inventory and takes the gear that is the highest item level and equips it for you. This is for people who may be starting the game, they start with their level 1 armor, and they don't know when they're picking up new things. They forget they're picking up new items and that they're not upgrading. With this optimize button, it will automatically take you to the highest item level set of gear. That being said, this optimize button does not have the ability to determine if that piece of gear is better for you than another piece of gear in your inventory. So once you've upgraded to the item level, it's still up to you to kind of optimize off stats and making sure, like, for example, if your level 36 piece that you just put on is actually a DPS piece that you're wearing as a tank, you got to be careful about that, because obviously that's not going to help you when you're getting beat on by 6 enemies. On top of that, they're also going to be doing a few other things, like adding the ability to look at the current HP value of a boss. Talked about VR very briefly, says the game's not really designed for it, so he's not really thinking about it too much. He says if he ever did it, though, he would probably want a VR thing where you could literally just walk through a city like Ul'dah or Ishgard, but in virtual reality, which I think would be pretty cool. For those of you saying, oh, but they showed off Titan with the PlayStation VR headset, yes. All PlayStation 4 titles are technically compatible with the PlayStation VR. That does not mean the games are designed for VR and have VR elements in mind. You can just put on the helmet and sure, you'll be there. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work very well, so keep that in mind. Then they brought it up. They brought up add-ons. It came up as a question. I thought for sure they were going to dodge this question. They might as well have with the answer. They said, sorry for the delay and sorry for the answer he's about to give you. If add-ons are going to be added at all, they're not going to play to functionality too much for the same reasons they've been telling us forever, where they don't want people to require certain add-ons for you to participate in content. This is especially prevalent when it comes to the console players, but even amongst PC players who don't prefer using add-ons, and on top of that, people using add-ons deliberately to harass and attack other players. To be honest, it happens with ACT anyway right now. The fact that they could have an official tool, even the ones that we've been recommending, a personal one that only you can see, a personal meter that you can use for improvement, would be appreciated, but not mentioned here. They said that if they do add-ons at all, they will not be added until at least 4.0. So stop asking. Pretty much is what it was. A very unfortunate answer. I am happy to see it addressed for the first time in a long time, but it seems that if it does get done, it will be mostly an aesthetic thing, changing menus, changing fonts, things like that. So then they asked him another very important question, and another reason I'm happy the UI guy was brought on. PvP versus PvE hotbars. Now, those of you who have been delving into the feast have no doubt been struggling to remember to change your binds back and forth. If you're not one of those people that actually know, you can use macros to change your hotbars. You should probably look some of that up. They said that it's a big request, probably one of the most often ones that he gets as a UI guy outside of add-ons. He says that, and prepare, because of the memory that the game has, if they were to do it on a per gear set basis, it would be very, very difficult. Instead, they're going to do something along the lines of allowing hotbars to be copy and pasted. I didn't particularly understand this part, and I should probably read the official translation of it so I can better understand it, but something along these lines that will enable different hotbars is currently in the works. It's just not something that has been permanently turned on. I imagine what the difference would be is literally a switch, PvP, PvE, as opposed to attaching it to every single gear set. That is my guess. And also, on top of that, just as notice the people who do PvP on multiple jobs, they are changing it so you no longer need to redo all of your PvP actions every time you change a job in PvP. All the PvP points that you get, the ability points, those will be separated on a per job basis as well. So less struggles. Those of you with macros probably have been getting around that for some time now, but not everyone has. They're also going to be doing something really weird with macros. So they're going to adjust the maximum number of macros that are going to be available. Currently, the way that it works is you have 100 macros across your account, I believe per server or something like that. What they're actually going to be doing is adding a macro palette to every individual character you have. That way, it's not just one palette being shared across, for example, let's say you have 16 characters. You can't even have 16 characters on one. That doesn't even make sense. This example doesn't even make sense. If you had 8 characters all on the same server, you could have 8 different palettes, which is a total of 800 macros. This is something that has to be set manually, though, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have more macros across all your characters. It just means you have more macros per character. So if you have different reasons for different macros across different characters, and on top of that, if you really like macros, you can set your macros to be shared if you don't want to make use of this new functionality. So keep that in mind. It is something you have to opt into. Confusing as hell. They also want you to be able to do things like use these macros to change entire stuff like your layout when you change jobs. People have been doing that. This almost seems like something like literally like they just avoided the question with PvP and PvE hotbars. It almost seems like they just re-evaluated it right here. I'm sure the official translation tells a very different story though. So let's get to that first. How many actions will we get in 4.0? The fact that they asked this, and it's because the cross hotbar, of course, filling up. Everyone's hotbars are filling up, cross hotbar or not. More along the lines, my key bindings are getting filled up. Minagawa says he doesn't know how many new abilities there's going to be. So he looks at Yoshida, and Yoshida didn't say, oh, there's going to be new abilities. He said, we're currently in the planning phases, but nothing is set in stone pretty much. There's no adjustments currently planned for the cross hotbar. That doesn't mean there won't be some at a future time. It's nerve-wracking because the way Yoshi P put it, he almost made it seem like, yeah, we haven't figured out how many new abilities there will be. It's like, what do you mean you better be replacing old abilities, dude. Like, you can't just keep piling shit on top of each other. We'll see what the result actually ends up being. Now, 24-minute instances or hunts, another UI element that bothers the shit out of me. Sometimes dots just don't appear. Sometimes you apply a dot to a target, and it just doesn't go to the forefront. You guys know what I'm talking about, especially in Void Ark. And then you try to reapply it, nothing happens. You pretty much have to wait till the entire duration falls off, and then reapply it for a chance at it actually becoming visible. It's a pain in the ass. They said they're currently exploring ways to adjust the memory allocation, but there is a chance they're going to increase the number of dots and debuffs that will be displayed with the enemy, no matter what changes are being planned. Now, are there any plans on making glamour that doesn't overwrite? So you know how when you apply a glamour, you apply it to a single piece of armor, and even if you put that piece of armor across multiple jobs, it maintains itself? They're trying to figure out a way to change that. It's apparently a very difficult thing because of the way they made the glamour system in the first place, but they're not giving up on it. They just need a more cohesive resolution to that problem. Also, my headset just turned off, but who the hell cares? Any plans to implement Vagrant Story? Since he worked on Vagrant Story, they asked them about that. They said maybe, but the armor looks very different and very strange in Final Fantasy XIV, so there's no guarantee. And finally, another big piece of information came from the UI lead. Yes, there are currently plans on increasing the inventory of the armory chest. It wasn't made clear with the unofficial translation if it's all inventory plus the armory chest, or if it's literally the amount of space in your armory chest. I believe they said in the armory chest itself. It will take some time. It's happening, and the number of slots that they're increasing it by has not finalized yet, but it is increasing. My guess, speculation, would be 5 new slots in every single one. Body, weapon, head, all that stuff. Then they finally moved on to the announcements, and the chat went batshit crazy when this part started. And you know what? I'm not going to lie, I did a little bit until we got to a later part. So Final Fantasy XIV is doing a collaboration with 7-Eleven in Japan, only in Japan currently. When you basically, you know how like you go to like 7-Eleven, it's like, oh, you know, buy a Slurpee and take the code off your receipt and put it on and get points for fucking Mountain Dew. I don't know. They're basically doing that in 7-Eleven for Japan with Final Fantasy XIV. When you purchase a soda or some kind of soft drink, a code's going to be on the thing. You go to the website, you put in the code, you get points. With the points, you get rewards. Now, when you put in the points, you get, I'm assuming 1 point per soda based on this like point scheme that they have here. There's 2 paths you can set upon. Each one is, I believe, 15 points total. Or 14. No, I believe there's actually 14 points total. Haha! 14. So in Path A, as an example, there's like 50 Aetheryte tickets for 1 point. 1 fucking soda gets you 50 free teleports. What the hell? 5 points gets you deluxe Heavens Crackers. 99 of them. Strangely, I'm not as upset about that as I am the Aetheryte tickets. If you get 7 points, you get an MGP gold card that's worth 30k MGP. I immediately, and I wrote it down here, fuck, I'll buy 7 sodas for this. I'll fucking buy 7 sodas for 30k MGP. Are you kidding me? At 11, you get a Titan mask. A mask that makes you look like Titan. And then at 15, you get a housemaid's attire. Or at 14, you get a housemaid's attire. Like, holy moly. I can't even believe how many rewards are coming from this thing. And that's only Path A. Path B had completely other things, some of it overlapping. And then on top of that, if you complete both paths, if you just love soda that much, and you buy that many in a month, you will get a white fat chocobo mount. Crazy. Now, we were all like, what the is going on here? Is this real? Are we really not getting this? What just happened? Why did that scroll down? I don't know. But anyway... it is coming to other regions. We don't know if it's through 7-Eleven. We don't know if it's through the Mog Station. We don't know anything. we know that eventually these items will be available in other regions, so you're going to have to spend money, no matter what. Like, there's no getting around that. There's also a BitCash campaign. BitCash is a I don't want to compare it to Bitcoin because I don't think it's anything like it, but it's basically a Japanese type currency that people use to like pay for things online, and you can like load up cards and shit at like 7-Elevens. And again, this is in conjunction with the 7-Eleven thing. If you go to a 7-Eleven and you buy at least 3,000 yen worth of BitCash, that you're going to be using for 3,000. Actually, I believe it's 3,000 yen worth of Krista or 3,000 Krista. It's one of the two. You'll actually get some items. You can get like Etherite tickets or an MGP gold card or things like that. But it's basically another campaign to encourage people to buy things through 7-Eleven Japan. Now moving away from the stuff that's infuriating, the next Fate, which will have a live letter, is going to be in Nico Nico Chokaigi 2016. We mentioned it earlier. It is April 29th and the 30th. There's going to be a bunch of events that they listed on their website. There's also going to be the merchandise we spoke about earlier being sold there, and then again it'll be sold on the e-store after. And then the live letter will take place teasing patch 3.3, and they're also going to have the CEO of Level 5 Incorporated. This guy came on before. He's the Level 5 Incorporated does Yokai Watch. And we thought there was going to be a collaboration event. Maybe this is the collaboration event and reveal that we're expecting. He's going to be returning to the show as a guest. They also added, like, you know, a new cactar lamp to the Crane games that you can find in, like, arcades in Japan. Yoshi P on April 1st is going to be walking around a server on the Elemental data center. That's a JP data center. We don't know what server, but I'm assuming it has something to do with a big April Fool's joke because it is happening on April 1st. They're also releasing an official written guide for Crafting Gathering and the Gold Saucer on March 31st. It is currently in Japanese only. I believe Marco said he will make a guide for those wishing to purchase it. So be on the lookout on the Dream Network forums or on his Twitter. Again, follow that, like I said at the beginning of the video. Also, some interesting news. Alexander's background music song called Locusts will actually be premiering as the main theme of a news channel on NHK on April 4th. News Check 11 is the name. Apparently, the reason why it's happening, the guy who runs the channel, or runs the program, his son plays 14, he was raiding, he loved the Alexander theme, so his dad went, I'm going to put that on my news show. I don't know. I don't know. I wish that could happen here. And also, PAX East, April 22nd and 24th, Final Fantasy XIV will be there, as will Yoshi P. He's going to be doing some light announcements with some light Q&A. I believe he's taking the questions live, so be on the lookout for that as well. Fingers crossed that I get to meet the man for real this time, not just rushing him into a picture that I have on my phone. But whatever. Anyway, that's it for the live letter on the unofficial side. We also have the official side, which I haven't actually looked through. If there's any screenshots here, we should probably just scroll through to see if we can find them real quick. Let me actually zoom out so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. All right. I don't remember this text being so big on their website. Or so wide, I guess I should say. Let's see. There's the Phantasy Star Online 2 thing. Any screenshots? And it's... Alright, here's the UI part. There's a ton of things here. There's a hobby he is interested in. Interesting. After we found a significant amount of time to change the core structure of the macro system. I'm trying... What did I even think was, like, wrong? What did I really want to check to see, like... To, like, double-check my sources on that? Oh, there's just so many things. There's just so many things. There's so many little things that came up in this live letter. I was actually pretty happy that there were so many tiny things that came up that we try asking about and we never get like the full details on it. But they actually came. Oh, that was right. The companion feature. Let's see. Would you like to start researching VR? I think that might be on page 3. Sephiroth isn't directly Gold Saucer. Additionally, we'll be making a large-scale update to Chocobo Racing. There will be a mode where you can have challenge races against NPC, and you'll be able to earn a lot of MGP for completing this. Just to clarify in the update to the Chocobo Racing. Previous live letter said you make your own platoon. Yes, see, Grand Company Mercenaries or Grand Company Platoon. This is content that has had some hardships during the planning stage, but we were playing... Oh, 3.4. Okay, so there's new items that can be purchased from Grand Companies in 3.3, and the platoons are 3.4, but there are not any promises. Okay. And they'll also be unlocking the second Lieutenant Grand Company ranks at that time. Okay, that was a big one that I wanted to confirm. I don't remember what the other one was I wanted to check. I believe it was the treasure hunting dungeons that I wanted to double check right here. Phantasy Star Online 2, Disciples of Hand, HQ NQ, Legendary Nodes, Orchestrion, Chinese themed clothing, Hildebrand, Scholasticate will be added in 3.4. We are aware that there's a lot of feedback. We're short. Okay, so they told them to try and make them longer. Delivering Moogle Nut. Where is these treasure? Where I get dungeon. Where it's not, it's where is it? Where, I guess it was kind of at the start. Let's see if it's here. Healers seem to miss their attacks quite frequently in dungeons. Oh, come on now. Fake Times, Alexander Might is Savage. Where was it in relation to everything else? It was after Free Companies. So that Free Company thing that I mentioned before. Oh wait, no, I didn't. Where's the new plot? So I feel like there's things that aren't here. Maybe they got. Well, sometimes when they're doing the live Q&A, sometimes they have to mix these questions in and put them in later. So it actually wouldn't surprise me too much if some of these questions are kind of like out of order. I'll just take a quick search with the word dungeon. If we don't find anything, I'm going to wrap this video up and go get some coffee before the stream. Nope. Alright, well, I'm sure that there is something here that we can find. If you can find it yourself, again, the links will be in the description of the video below. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Oh, yeah, that's right. I moved it over again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this recap of the Final Fantasy XIV Live Letter number 28. Be sure to check all those links under the in the description of the video so you can find all the Twitters, the Twitches, the links to various things that you can check out. Be sure to do that, and be sure to throw Marco some of your love. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining me in this video, and, well, I'll see you on the live stream. Until then, take care.